Recently, an old friend and a viewer of the channel reached out to let me know they were clearing out their games room. They wanted to go to somebody who'd really appreciate them and gave me first dibs. And that's how I bought an entire Atari and Amiga collection.
Game Pickups! Building the games room! Work trips! Live game hunting!
Hello again folks, and welcome back to a super exciting episode, as this is one of the biggest purchases I've ever made and the first time I bought an entire collection to add to my collection. And what an amazing thing it is to add into the collection. I had a very small Atari collection before and I've never had any Amiga games, and this is going to blow your minds. I felt so happy and privileged when I was reached out to go and buy this entire collection. It's always sad to see somebody breaking up their collection, but they were happy it was going to a loving home, and trust me, I was definitely going to appreciate the collection. That means today we are going to go through this entire collection pickup, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might have realised the games room looks a little bit different. That's because this collection is so vast, I've had to rearrange the games room to make a home for it. Before we jump into this huge collection, I just want to remind you folks, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and please subscribe, as I put new videos out every Saturday live at 5. I really want you folks along for the ride. Now, trust me, this is going to be amazing. Here we go then, let's get into this collection. And it's not just games, we have consoles as well. We're going to start off going for the Atari 2600 stuff. Now, the thing is, I don't have the greatest knowledge about these kind of consoles. They were very much kind of before my time, and some of them I've only really played in the more recent years. So we have two different Atari consoles here. And these are both 2600s, obviously. I don't really know if there's a great difference between these, but please let me know down in the comments below anything you want to share about this collection, as I know very little about the Atari and the Amiga and would definitely need some help building the collection even more. Of course, with consoles we need controllers, and I have two different style controllers for the Atari, so let me know, does one go with each console? I'm not really sure. We have the classic joystick and more this kind of hand paddle one, but let me know in the comments down below which one you prefer. Of course, these consoles came with all the leads, but this is a question I have for you folks who might have a bit more Atari knowledge than myself. What is the best way to hook up an Atari to an old school CRT? If you have a little bit of knowledge, please share it in the comments down below. Sticking with Atari and sticking with consoles, here we have the Atari 520 ST, a console I've never owned, let alone played. So let me know, what are some of the must-play games for this console? With this pickup, I did get a large selection of games, so I'm not even really sure which ones work for the 520 ST, but this is a console I'm very excited to get into collecting for, and even more excited to start playing. And here we have the final console, the absolutely iconic Amiga Commodore A500 Plus. I know it is a very iconic console and one which has a lot of places in the hearts of many of you folks watching. I have never played one of these. I know recently they re-released a mini of this console which has been very popular, so I'm looking forward to jumping in and going back and playing some of the classics for this console in the way it was intended on the original hardware. Of course, with consoles we need controllers. We have this Atari mouse and this Commodore joystick. But this is one of the things, yes, I was very happy to add all these bits into my collection, but my knowledge of the Amiga and even the Atari isn't that amazing. So if anyone has any tips of the best way to set these up and how to get the most out of these consoles, please drop those links in the comments down below. Now, let's get into the games, and trust me, there is a lot of games. Let's get into these games then, and trust me, there is literally hundreds to go through. And I've never seen this many Atari 2600 games in one place. Gonna start with a very boring kind of blank one, such as Human Cannonball, Dodge 'em, Video Pinball, 32-in-1 game cartridge. The thing is that amazed me about these is how could you sell a game with such boring artwork? But the thing is, obviously back in the day, these were in box, and I'm sure they've been a lot more exciting, but you know, this is literally the most basic packaging in gaming. Next set, and these are all games that have a much more exciting look to them, but games I'm not really too familiar with. Obviously we all know the classic Centipede, but did you know there was a game called Millipede, which I guess is just an even harder version? Then we have Yar's Revenge, a game I think I might have played on the kind of rare collection on the Xbox One. Then we have Pele's Soccer, because you have to have a sports game on every console ever. Joust, an absolute classic. Then we have Kangaroo, a game I've never heard of, let alone played. Combat, which I guess is some kind of very basic tank battle kind of game. Tennis, which I'm sure is just a glorified Pong. Strategy X, which is in a kind of different cartridge. So if anyone knows why this is a different cartridge, please let me know in the comments down below. Pole Position, one of the very first racing games of all time. Jungle Hunt, which probably looks way more exciting than it actually is. Battle Zone, which looks pretty cool. And finally, Dodge'em, with the most kind of late 70s, early 80s cover of all time. This is our final set of games in for the 2600. So we have some doubles, such as Joust. We also have some kind of alternate covers. So we have this cover of Centipede, and also this different version of Centipede. So let me know if you know why they released multiple versions of games, such as Space Invaders with the red background, and then we have Space Invaders with the black background. Then we have absolute classics such as Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Man, Asteroids, possibly the most iconic game on the 2600, as well as Cuba, and arguably one of the games I'm most excited to play, Galaxia. Let's get into these Amiga games. As such, I say that because of course the Amiga could use kind of software. Software such as file management software, which, if you cannot tell, this is brand new and sealed. Yes, it is very dusty, but it is actually pretty much still sealed. This is one of the weirder things about this collection. There is multiple copies of some of these things. Like there's a couple of copies of the file manager. Then we have the database. Once again, it's still sealed, even though the plastic has gone incredibly brown over the year. A sealed copy of Spreadsheet for the Amiga. Another copy of Spreadsheet for the Amiga. And finally, another sealed copy of Spreadsheet for the Amiga. I don't know what's weirder about this collection, that there's so many sealed items, or there's so many of the same item, but trust me, this is nothing as we're going to dive deeper into this collection. I must admit, I never knew there was a copy of Paint for the Amiga, and this thing is complete in the box, even though the box is actually the booklet pretty much. The entire book for this fills the box, and just having this complete in the box is really cool. It's important to remember the Amiga wasn't just for gaming, you could also use software such as Paint. Let's get into some games then, and some of these games are mixed up. There's some here for the Atari and some here for the Amiga. So the first game we have here is from Codemasters, and it is Kamikaze, which looks like a really super cool kind of shooting game, and it looks really good. And I think $7.99 for a game like this back in the day isn't too bad. Then we've got the first of many Indiana Jones games. You have Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, and if nothing else, that artwork is absolutely incredible, and it's a real shame they didn't do Indiana Jones games as much these days. Talking of Indiana Jones, this is another weird part of this collection. We have not one, not two, but 3 copies of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which looks very different depending what console you're playing it on. I have no idea why there is 3 copies of this game in the collection, but it's cool to see. Again, speaking of multiple copies of games, we have many copies of this game, Elf, in various degrees of like completions. This one is a little bit rougher, but some of these are pretty much still sealed. Yes, the plastic may be slightly ripped and a bit damaged, but to see a sealed game from this time is pretty crazy. But nowhere near as crazy as seeing this many copies of Extra Time Kickoff. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 copies of Kickoff Extra Time. Whoever owned these consoles before me really loved this football game. They must have really also loved this game, Thunder Jaws, which has some of the best artwork of all time, and by the looks of things was an arcade game, which I've never played either this or the arcade game. These are once again in various conditions, but this one at the bottom is in absolutely fantastic condition. And it's a weird thing, like, what do I do with the multiples from this collection? I kind of feel bad breaking it up, but do I really need 10 or 11 copies of certain games? Let me know what you do in the comments down below. Next games are all kind of oddities, such as Scrambled Spirits here, which looks kind of like the same kind of vein as 1942, but look a bit closer and you'll see it's made by Sega, which I didn't realise that Sega made games for other consoles other than their own consoles in the early 90s. Bart Simpson vs. the Space Mutants. I know this game was released on the Master System and the NES, but I never knew it was released on kind of the home PC market. And it's in such a weird small box as well, literally just big enough for the disc, but very cool to have in the collection. Similarly, we have Lemmings, which the box is in pretty rough shape, but you know, if you're talking about home PC gaming in the early 90s, where would you be without Lemmings? This game, Spike in Transylvania for the Atari ST, is only really weird because of the box size. I don't really understand why there are so many different kind of ways to release these games in big boxes, little boxes, cassette tapes. So if you do know, please let me know down in the comments below. Increasing the box sizes, we have our next set of games. We have Advanced Rugby Simulator from Codemasters, which if you played a sports game in the early 90s, you know Codemasters were the name for the greats. Next up we have a bit of a weird one, Alpha Waves. I think this is like a virtual reality relaxation program. It looks a bit kind of trippy LSD style kind of thing. No idea. Then we have Tennis with Tiebreak. The box is looking a bit rough on this, but I hope I can clean this one up a little bit. Another sports game, we have Steve Davis World Snooker. Weirdly, I think I remember playing snooker games back on one of these PCs, maybe at one of my uncle's houses or something, so that's kind of a weird throwback. Then we have an absolute classic with Kick-Off 2. This was in the days before FIFA. We had games such as Kick-Off, Sensible Soccer, stuff like that. These were the classic sports games back in the day. Speaking of Sensible Soccer, here we are moving into one of the main reasons I bought this collection, the big box Amiga games, and possibly one of the most iconic big box Amiga games there is Sensible Soccer. What an absolutely iconic football game, still one of the best football games of all time. Continuing with the football theme, well, soccer, we have Soccer Kid. This was a game I think my mate used to play when he was younger. He could only ever describe to me, I never actually played myself, but essentially it's kind of a side-scrolling 2D platform game where you use your football to try and save the World Cup from aliens who have abducted it. Definitely a very weird game, and one I'm really looking forward to jumping in and playing. Carrying on the sports theme, next up we have some big box sports games. First off we have Kingpin Arcade Sports Bowling by a small company called Team 17, who if you remember made the game Worms. Sadly Worms was not in this bundle, but it's definitely one I add to my Amiga collection down the line. The thing is with a lot of these sports games, some of the graphics look absolutely incredible. Staying on the sports theme, we have this kind of collection from a company called Ocean. If you remember them, you must be over the age of 30. They're kind of a company that died away, which is a real shame. They used to put out some really quality games. And finally, we have Nick Faldo's Golf Championship. And again, the graphics on this look absolutely amazing. I think it just goes to show, back in the day, and even today, some of the best games graphically are normally sports games. Next up we have racing games, and these were always really good back in the 16-bit era. So first off we have Nigel Mansell's World Championship, an absolutely iconic F1 racing game. Next up we're moving on to motorbikes with Prime Mover, which kind of looks like the hang-on classic kind of 16-bit motorcycle racing games of the time. It seemed there was so many 16-bit Lotus games, and I really enjoy the Lotus games on the Mega Drive, so I'm sure I'll enjoy this one. And then finally a game which I always thought came out on the N64, but I guess we had Top Gear games well before then. And looking at the back of this one looks really cool. Again from a company that disappeared over time, Gremlin. Next up we have some games I've never really heard of. So first off we have Simulator Pinball, which I kind of guess is kind of PC pinball game. There's not really too much to that one. Next up we have a game called Bonanza Bros, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think is just released on the Mega Drive 2 Mini, and if nothing else, the artwork for this looks really weird. So let me know in the comments down below if you've ever played Bonanza Bros. Very strange looking one, this one. And this game, Skeleton Crew, has one of the greatest covers I have ever seen. And on the back it has a description: want to pack a big gun with enough ammo to level a city? You've got it. This game sounds hardcore as hell, and I am totally here for it. Next up are some Amiga games I've kind of heard of and I'm really quite excited to actually play. So first off we have Paperboy 2, because to be honest I kind of didn't realise it was a sequel to this iconic game, and I kind of feel like I should play this, and I'm sure it's actually quite a fun one. This game, Frontier Elite 2, looks absolutely incredible. It looks like basically you can explore an entire galaxy, and it looks immense, and this thing is weighty. The booklet in here is a small encyclopedia. Any game that needs an instruction book that thick is going to be a deep one. Finally we have Sid Meier's Colonization. I'm a massive fan of the Civilization games, but I've never played this one, so really looking forward to diving into this one and creating my own perfect world. Next up we have some platform games, and a game I've never heard of is Rodland, which looks like you're a shark with some... I have no idea. It's very hard to judge some of these kind of early 90s games off the cover. On the back, it doesn't really give anything else away as well. Same as this game here, which is called Pushover, which again, I have no idea what this is about. It looks very interesting on the back and is from Ocean, so it's probably a very good platformer. But one platform game which I think everyone who played 16-bit in the early 90s remembers is McDonald Land. One of the cleverest pieces of advertising ever made. This game was absolutely iconic. I think a lot of people probably played this on the Mega Drive, but I'm really glad to add it to my Amiga collection. It's a nice surprise that some of the biggest beaten up games of the 16-bit era are also on the Amiga. So I was super happy to see when I had this copy of Mortal Kombat. But let me know if anyone has played this specific copy of Mortal Kombat. Is it the full uncut version with the blood and the fatalities? It does say on the back all the bloody realism, so let me know. Is this the full uncut version or the nasty one where they cut all the violence? In the 16-bit era, there was two groups of people. The people who liked Mortal Kombat and the people who liked Street Fighter 2. Let me know in the comments down below which one you were, but here we have two copies of Street Fighter 2. But I want to know, how does this version of the Amiga stand up to the Super Nintendo version, which I think is probably the definitive version of this iconic beat-up game. Final game from this pickup is a game which I never knew even existed, Cannon Fodder 2. And I'm super excited to play this as I was a massive fan of the original back on the Mega Drive, and I never knew they made a sequel. Let me know in the comments down below, was this exclusive to the Amiga? If so, that's probably why I didn't play it, but all that changes today as I'm jumping straight into this one. It just shows how big this collection was that I missed Worms. I said earlier in the video I'd love to add this to my collection. I didn't realise this was even in the box, so finding this right at the end is a massive, very welcome surprise. You would think that would be all of this collection, but this is the collection that keeps giving. We have all of this kind of literature that came with some of these consoles. We have Amiga guides. We have some of the original advertisement. We just have books and like strategy guides and everything. And these are the kind of cool things I love. As for me, it'll be all about kind of gaining knowledge into this stuff. I have no idea about a lot of these consoles, and to me, this will be the first time owning and playing most of them. So having all these kind of pamphlets and instruction books are really going to help me delve deeper and hopefully set up a perfect Amiga and Atari setup. But still, there is more. We have so many loose discs. And that's the thing, these were all box games. We also have all of these loose discs. And the funny thing about this is this was at a time when people could just pirate games so easily. So I have no idea what's on some of these unmarked discs. Obviously, ones that are labelled are quite obvious, but I just can't wait. I'm just loving diving into this collection. It just keeps pulling up more and more surprises from the past. I'm truly humbled I was given the opportunity to buy this entire collection, and I'm so happy to have it in my home. But that's not all. The person who sold this to me also wanted me to have a few gifts for the collection. These are bits he doesn't really collect and had no space for, such as Miss Pac-Man for the SNES. Then we have a golf game for the SNES, and most importantly, out of these SNES games, we have Super Return of the Jedi. The Star Wars trilogy on SNES are a set of games that I really want to add to my collection. I may have added the last one, but you know for sure I'll be adding the other two into my collection. These are absolutely iconic, fantastic Star Wars games. Speaking of iconic and Star Wars, we have these two big box PC games. We have Dark Forces, one of the best Star Wars games of all time, and the iconic Carmageddon, the original shock game from back in the 90s. I remember the absolute storm that was kicked up about this game, and these are two big box PC games I'm very happy to add to my collection. There we have it then, the biggest pickup I've ever done, an entire Atari and Amiga collection. And I'm definitely going to be looking for a lot of help and a lot of answers to many questions I have about this collection. I'm really lucky as I have a very strong Amiga community near me. I'm definitely going to be reaching out for them for some help, both in the setup and just kind of getting to know this new console. But for me, it's all about the adventure. I'm really looking forward to deep diving more into both of these absolutely iconic consoles. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, keep playing the game. See y'all soon.